I flew home for New Year's to find Dad alone with a sandwich. The note said, "We used your money for NYC. Watch him for the week." Dad whispered, "They'll regret this." I just smiled. 3 days later, they were at my door panicking. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit! This happened a few months ago when I was visiting family for New Year's. My old man was sitting alone while my mom, my brother, and his family went off to celebrate in New York. But they didn't just leave him behind. That night, I found out what they'd really been up to, and I made sure they regretted it. Here's what went down. I, 35 males, flew home expecting the usual family gathering. Some context. Our family dynamics have been messed up for years. After my parents divorced when I was 18, Dad, 68 male, kept the family house while Mom, 65 female, moved in with my brother Logan, 38 male, and his wife Isabel, 36 female, in their apartment across town. I moved away for college and stayed away, building my own life in tech while checking in on Dad regularly via video calls and quarterly visits. Logan and Isabel have always struggled financially, not because they couldn't find work, but because they refused to live within their means. Designer clothes, luxury cars they couldn't afford, lavish vacations on credit. Meanwhile, they'd been constantly borrowing from Dad since their wedding 10 years ago. Small amounts at first, a couple hundred here and there for emergencies, then increasingly larger sums that never got repaid. We're talking thousands of dollars vanishing into their lifestyle. I walked up to a dark house that New Year's Eve. No cars in the driveway, porch light off, curtains drawn. The kind of empty that makes you double-check the date to make sure you didn't mess up. The inside was worse. Freezing cold, silent and dark, except for a faint glow from the kitchen. That's where I found Dad sitting alone at the table, eating a dry sandwich with a cup of water. No New Year's dinner, no decorations, just him in a cold house. The thermostat was set to 58 degrees. I thought maybe they were out getting last-minute stuff, but then I saw the note stuck to the fridge. My jaw literally clenched reading it. Used your money for NYC, watch him for the week. That's it. They took the money I sent for the New Year's dinner and gifts, $650 I transferred to Dad's account marked holiday dinner, and blew it on a spontaneous New York City trip. Left Dad behind with basically nothing in the fridge except bread, peanut butter, and some expired lunch meat. Dad didn't say much at first, just nodded when I asked if he was okay. Then he leaned in close and whispered, "They'll regret this." His eyes had this clarity I hadn't seen in years. I didn't get mad. Not outwardly anyway. I just made sure he got a hot meal, turned the heat back on, and set up his room properly. While I was ordering groceries on my phone, I noticed Dad had an alert from his bank app. Insufficient funds for his automatic mortgage payment. That's when I knew this was worse than just a ruined holiday. I wasn't about to give them the reaction they expected. I had something better in mind. Over the next 3 days, I started digging. Not randomly, I had suspicions for a while. Last spring, I'd quietly installed some cameras around the house. Just basic security stuff that synced to my phone. Dad knew about them, but the rest of the family didn't. I'd done it after noticing some of Dad's possessions mysteriously disappearing during my previous visits. His gold watch from retirement, Mom's old wedding ring he'd kept, even his prescription meds. I went through bank statements left in drawers, checked the Wi-Fi history, looked at mail that had piled up. Each piece told part of a bigger story, and none of it was good. The pattern was clear. Every few weeks, Logan and Isabel would drive over from their apartment, raid Dad's fridge, do laundry in his machines to save on utilities, and somehow Dad's bank account would be lighter afterward. Mom enabled it all, telling Dad he needed to help the kids out, while she herself pocketed cash from his wallet. I remembered one incident from my last visit 6 months ago. Logan had shown up in a brand new Audi Q7, acting like he'd gotten some big promotion. When Dad admired it, Logan tossed him the keys and said, "Take it for a spin, old man, just don't crash it." Dad declined, saying his arthritis was acting up. Later that night, I overheard Logan on the phone telling someone how he'd squeezed another $5,000 from the retirement fund, and that the old man didn't suspect a thing. The retirement fund he was talking about? Dad's pension account that Logan had somehow gained access to. Another time, Isabel had come over with their 17-year-old daughter Amelia for Sunday dinner. Dad had spent all day cooking, but Isabel took one look at the roast and announced it wasn't organic, so she'd ordered delivery instead, using Dad's credit card without asking. When Dad quietly objected, She rolled her eyes and said, "It's just money. Not like you're spending it on anything important anyway." Then, she and Amelia ate the expensive takeout while Dad's home-cooked meal sat untouched. The first red flag in my current investigation was the stack of past due notices hidden in the back of the kitchen junk drawer. Second was the credit card statements in Dad's name with charges for high-end electronics, designer clothes, and fancy restaurants he'd never visit. Third was the browser history, showing searches for payday loans and reverse mortgages. The house itself showed signs of neglect. The furnace filter hadn't been changed in over a year. The gutters were clogged. The lawnmower in the garage had a layer of dust that suggested no one had touched it in months, despite Dad paying Logan $200 monthly for property maintenance. I found a folder of medical bills showing Dad had skipped his last 2 cardiology appointments. The co-pays were each $45, which he apparently couldn't afford. Meanwhile, there was a $1,200 charge on his Visa for Amelia's Sweet 16 photo shoot just 3 months earlier. Dad watched me collect everything, organizing it all on the dining room table. He didn't seem surprised, just nodded like he'd been waiting for someone to finally notice. "How long has this been happening?" I asked him. "Years," he said quietly. "Started small, a few dollars here and there. Then it got worse after Logan married Isabel. Your mom convinced me it was normal to help them." "Help them with what? Their 4th vacation this year?" Dad shrugged. "Logan always has some emergency. Car trouble, medical bills, home repairs. Last month it was Amelia's college fund. Said they needed to secure her spot at New York University. The more I dug, the angrier I got. But I kept it controlled, methodical. I made copies of everything, took photos, downloaded the camera footage. By the 3rd day, I had enough evidence to make a lawyer very interested. I pulled up footage from Thanksgiving, showing Logan and Isabel arriving 2 hours late, staying just long enough to eat, then loading up containers with all the leftovers before taking off. Dad told me they'd claimed they were meeting friends for dessert. The camera in the kitchen caught Isabel rifling through Dad's checkbook while Mom distracted him in the living room. We were just finishing lunch when the pounding started at the front door. Frantic, angry knocking, and muffled shouting. Logan's voice was the loudest. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. All 4 of them, Logan, Isabel, Mom, and Amelia, standing on the porch with their luggage. I opened the door. They looked terrible, exhausted with dark circles under their eyes. Zero New York glamour left. Logan, Isabel, my niece Amelia, and my mother all stood there with their bags, talking over each other. Isabel stepped forward first, designer purse still on her arm despite their supposed money troubles. It was a new Gucci bag I recognized from their latest collection. Retail price around $2,800. "It's not what it looks like," she started, talking fast. "There was a miscommunication. We didn't think you'd actually show up. I just moved aside so they could see Dad. He was sitting on the couch, warm, clean, eating a bowl of stew while watching TV. He didn't even look at them." The silence hit harder than anything I could have said. Amelia rolled her eyes and started texting on her phone, completely detached from the situation. Isabel launched into excuses about nightmare flights and canceled hotel rooms. Mom stood behind them, nervously fidgeting with her purse strap, avoiding eye contact with me. "We need help," Logan finally admitted, checking his watch like he had somewhere better to be. "Something's wrong with our bank accounts. Cards aren't working. We're locked out of the travel app." They'd booked the trip using my money and maxed out their credit cards. But now their rent was due, and they needed a place to stay while they sorted things out. Logan spoke like this was all just a minor inconvenience that I should help fix. "Our apartment building has a plumbing issue," Isabel added, wrinkling her nose. "We need to crash here for a week or 2. I noticed Amelia wearing new clothes that still had the price tags partially visible under the collar. Must have been a rough trip. I let them spill everything, every problem, every misunderstanding, every excuse. Then I told them the truth. The cameras in the house had been running since March. I had footage of every visit they made, every time they left Dad with cold leftovers while they ordered expensive takeout in the car, every time they raided his medicine drawer looking for painkillers. I have everything," I said. "Video, audio, screenshots of your group chats synced to the kitchen tablet you never knew was listening." Logan's face went from entitled to panicked in seconds. Isabel's fake smile disappeared. Amelia finally looked up from her phone, suddenly paying attention. Mom's face went pale. "I even have footage of you," I said to Amelia, "stealing cash from Dad's wallet while he was napping on Thanksgiving. $80, wasn't it? For concert tickets you just had to have?" Amelia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Then she looked at her parents accusingly, like it was their fault she'd been caught. "You had no right to spy on us," Logan snapped, his panic quickly turning to anger. That's illegal. Illegal? I laughed. That's rich coming from someone who's been stealing from his own father. We weren't stealing, Isabel cut in, her voice sharp. We were borrowing. There's a difference. Did Dad know you were borrowing when you forged his signature on loan applications? I asked. The room went silent. Mom stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker like she always did. I'm sure we can work this out as a family. Your brother has been under a lot of stress. Don't, I said, cutting her off. You're just as guilty. I have footage of you taking cash from Dad's wallet while he was napping. Logan lunged at me then, grabbing my shirt. You self-righteous piece of... I pushed him back. Hard. He stumbled into the coffee table, knocking over a lamp. Don't touch me, I said. My voice was calm, which seemed to unnerve him more than if I'd yelled. Isabel started screaming about how ungrateful I was, how they'd been taking care of Dad while I was off living my life. Amelia joined in, saying I was ruining everything and that I was just jealous of their trip. Mom kept trying to step between us, pleading for calm. Dad just sat there, watching it all unfold, his face unreadable. Get out, I finally said. All of you. Now. You can't kick us out of Dad's house, Logan sneered. This isn't your property. Actually, I pulled out my phone. As of this morning, I have a temporary power of attorney. Dad signed the papers 2 weeks ago, just in case something like this happened. You're bluffing, Isabel said, but her voice wavered. I showed them the document on my phone. The house is off limits to all of you. The accounts are frozen. The luxury SUV you've been borrowing was reported stolen this morning. That's our car, Isabel protested. Really? Because it's registered to Dad. Title's in his name. Insurance is in his name. But the payments come out of his account. Technically, that's auto theft. Logan's face twisted with rage. He took another step toward me, fists clenched. Try it, I said. Mom started crying, begging us to stop fighting. Isabel grabbed her purse, suddenly in a hurry to leave. Amelia slammed her phone into her pocket, glaring at me. Logan stood there shaking with anger until Isabel pulled at his arm. This isn't over, he hissed as they walked out. Actually, it is, I said, closing the door behind them. I watched through the window as they argued on the driveway. Logan was gesturing wildly, pointing back at the house. Isabel was texting frantically. Mom was wiping her eyes with a tissue. Amelia was already halfway down the street, apparently done with all of them. Eventually, they piled into an Uber that arrived 10 minutes later. As they drove off, I turned to Dad. You okay? I asked. He nodded slowly, then surprised me. There's something else you need to see. He stood up and motioned for me to follow him. Not to the basement as I expected, but to his bedroom. He went to the closet, moved aside some old boxes, and revealed a small floor safe I'd never noticed before. He entered the combination with practiced ease, opened it, and pulled out a weathered green tin box. I've been waiting for the right time, he said, handing it to me. Thought I might die before I got the chance. The box was heavier than it looked. I carried it to the dining room table and opened it carefully, not sure what to expect. Inside were papers, dozens of them, bank records, old checks, letters, and a typed timeline spanning nearly a decade. I didn't understand at first, until I saw the pattern. Withdrawals, forgeries, loans taken out in Dad's name. They'd been bleeding him dry for years, using his social security number to open credit cards, getting payday loans he never knew about, and never benefited from. One document showed Logan had signed as a co-signer for a reverse mortgage that Dad never agreed to. The notary signature was fake, done by one of Isabel's friends who worked at a UPS store. The preliminary paperwork indicated they would have gotten about $175,000 from the deal, leaving Dad with almost no equity in his home. The records showed clear patterns. Every time Isabel wanted a new car or designer bag, mysterious withdrawals appeared from Dad's accounts. When Amelia needed expensive clothes or the latest phone, Logan would forge Dad's signature on a loan application. Mom's name appeared repeatedly too, as a witness on documents Dad had never seen. One particularly damning piece of evidence was a life insurance policy taken out on Dad 2 years ago. Logan was listed as the sole beneficiary. The policy had a clause that covered accidental death, but excluded suicide. The premium payments, $267 monthly, were automatically withdrawn from Dad's checking account. How long have you been collecting this? I asked, stunned by the meticulous documentation. 3 years, Dad said. After your mother moved in with them, things got worse. She'd come over, distract me, and they'd go through my papers. I started making copies of everything. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, flipping through credit card statements showing charges at high-end restaurants and designer boutiques. I was embarrassed at first, he admitted. Couldn't believe my own son would do this to me. Then I was worried what Logan might do if confronted. He's always had a temper. Last year, after I started sending money directly to him, he'd used some of it to pay for an attorney. Every month he built his case, piece by piece, waiting for a moment exactly like this. Logan always thought he deserved more than you, Dad said quietly. Even when you were kids, always taking, never giving back. I found a note Dad had written to himself after a particularly bad incident last year. Logan had come over asking for $3,000 for car repairs. When Dad hesitated, Logan had suggested that perhaps Dad was developing dementia and should consider more supervised living arrangements. Dad, seriously, why didn't you tell me about this sooner? I asked. They threatened to cut me off completely. No visits from Amelia, no calls, nothing. I thought I could handle it, fix it somehow. He sighed. I was wrong. There was another document that caught my eye. A medical power of attorney form with Logan's name on it, dated just 3 months ago. Dad's signature looked shaky, forced. Did you sign this? I asked, holding up the paper. Dad shook his head. Number Logan brought it over one day when I was sick with the flu. Said it was insurance paperwork that needed updating. I refused to sign it. He must have forged my signature afterward. I added it to the growing pile of evidence. Anything else I should know? Dad hesitated. Last month, Logan asked a lot of questions about my medications. Which ones I take when I take them. Said he was concerned about interactions. A chill ran through me. We're reporting all of this. Today. The next morning, I called Dad's attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Elaine, who specialized in elder abuse cases. She arrived within the hour, reviewed the evidence, and didn't mince words. This is criminal, she said, sorting the documents into neat piles. Identity theft, fraud, financial exploitation of an elder. We're looking at felony charges. She explained the process. First, a police report. Then, a civil protection order to keep them away from Dad and the house. Simultaneously, she would file both criminal charges and a separate civil elder abuse lawsuit to recover what was stolen. The criminal case would take longer, but with the evidence we had, she was confident. Filing both criminal and civil cases gives us the best chance at full restitution, she explained. The civil suit can proceed even if they manage to plea down the criminal charges. How long? I asked. Protection order? Within 48 hours. Asset freeze? About a week if the judge agrees to emergency relief, which I think they will. Criminal charges? That depends on the DA, but I'd guess within 30 days. Trial could be 6 months out, but with this evidence, they'll likely plea bargain. Dad signed the necessary forms, his hand steady. I just want what's mine back. Theft over $100,000 is a Class B felony, Elaine explained gently. I understand their family, but the law is clear. The preliminary accounting showed they'd stolen approximately $215,000 over the past 5 years. This included direct theft from bank accounts, fraudulent loans and credit cards, the attempted reverse mortgage, and the misappropriated vehicle. The total would likely increase as the forensic accountant dug deeper. By that afternoon, the police had taken statements and copies of our evidence. 2 days later, a judge signed the protection order, barring Logan, Isabel, Mom, and even Amelia from coming within 500 feet of Dad or the house. Logan didn't take it well. He started sending threatening texts, which we promptly forwarded to the police. Mom called crying, saying we were tearing the family apart. We blocked her number after the third call. A week later, exactly as Elaine predicted, we were at the courthouse for the civil hearing on the asset freeze and elder abuse claim. Elaine had strategically filed both a criminal complaint and a separate civil elder abuse lawsuit to maximize the chances of full restitution. The judge reviewed our evidence and granted the emergency relief, freezing their accounts pending further investigation. This was all happening before any criminal charges were formally filed. As we walked out of the courtroom, Isabel was waiting in the hallway. Her designer clothes couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes or the tension in her face. She snapped when she saw me. "You coward!" she shouted, pointing a finger. "You're destroying our lives over nothing!" Her voice echoed through the marble hallway, turning heads. I kept walking, but she followed, her heels clicking aggressively on the floor. "We took care of him for years while you were gone," she hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You show up for one holiday and suddenly you're son of the year?" I stopped and turned. "You left him alone with a sandwich and a note. That's not care." "It was just money," she said, her voice rising. "Just stupid money that he wasn't using anyway. He wanted to help us." A security guard started moving our way. Isabel noticed and raised her volume even more. "You think you're so much better than us? Logan said you were always the golden child, Daddy's favorite. Well, guess what? He complained about you all the time. How you never visited. How you abandoned him." Her face was contorted, mascara starting to run. People were openly staring now. You're nothing but a vindictive little... Ma'am, the court officer cut in firmly. You need to lower your voice or leave the building. Isabel spun on him. Do you know what he's doing? He's ruining our lives. We can't even buy groceries. That's not my concern, ma'am. This is a courthouse. She looked back at me, hatred in her eyes. This isn't over? She spat, echoing Logan's words from days earlier. Then she stormed off, nearly knocking over an elderly woman in her rush to exit. Elaine, who had witnessed the whole scene, put a hand on my shoulder. This is why we got the protection order, she said quietly. They're unraveling. 2 weeks after the asset freeze, Mom showed up at the house unannounced. I was in the kitchen making lunch when I saw her through the window, standing on the porch, looking smaller and older than I remembered. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. You're violating the protection order, I said without preamble. I know, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But I had to talk to you. Please. I didn't invite her in. Just stood in the doorway, arms crossed. 5 minutes, I said. She nodded, clutching her purse. I've been thinking a lot about when you were little. Remember how you and Logan used to play in the backyard? Those little forts you'd build? You were always so good to him, looking out for your big brother even though he didn't always deserve it. I didn't respond. This was classic Mom, using nostalgia to manipulate. He's not a bad person, she continued. He's just made some mistakes. We all have. Stealing over $200,000 from Dad isn't a mistake, I said flatly. It's a felony. She flinched but pressed on. It wasn't like that. He was just borrowing. Things got out of hand. Logan has always struggled with money, you know that. He needs help, not punishment. He needs consequences, I corrected. Please, her voice cracked. This is a family matter. We should handle it privately. Your father would never have wanted this to become a legal thing. He loved Logan. He loved all of us. I felt a surge of anger. Don't tell me what Dad would want. You left him, remember? Moved in with Logan and helped them steal from him for years. I didn't know. Yes, you did. I cut her off. We have footage of you distracting him while Isabel went through his office. We have your signature on documents he never signed. You knew exactly what was happening. She started crying then. Soft, practiced tears that had worked on Dad for decades. I was wrong. I know that. But please, can't we work this out as a family? Drop the charges? We'll pay it back, I promise. And with what money? The accounts you've already drained? We can figure something out, she pleaded. Logan could lose everything. His job, his future. Think about Amelia. She's just a child. Amelia is 17 and was in on it too, I said. I have texts where she bragged about getting money from Grandpa's stash. Everyone knew exactly what they were doing. Mom's tears dried up quickly. Her expression hardened. You always were stubborn, just like your father. Time's up, I said, starting to close the door. He'll never forgive you for this, she said quickly. Breaking up the family? Is that what you want? To be alone with just your bitter old dad? I laughed without humor. Better than being surrounded by thieves. I closed the door on her protests and watched through the window as she finally left, pulling out her phone as she walked away. Probably calling Logan to report her failed mission. I didn't tell Dad about the visit. He had enough to worry about. A few days after Mom's visit, I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, the man on the other end introduced himself as Doug Reston, Logan's former boss at Paramount Financial. Former boss? I asked, surprised. Logan had always talked about his job at Paramount like it was the cornerstone of his success. Yes, Doug confirmed. I heard about the charges against him. I'm not surprised, honestly. Doug explained that Logan had been fired 3 months ago, well before the New Year's trip, for submitting fraudulent expense reports. He'd been claiming reimbursements for client meetings that never happened, dinners that were actually personal expenses, and conference fees for events he never attended. The company decided not to press charges if he left quietly, Doug said. We didn't want the publicity, but when I saw the news about the elder abuse case, I thought you should know this isn't isolated behavior. I asked why he was calling me specifically. Your brother mentioned you a few times, Doug said, always with this resentment. Said you had it easy. When I saw your name in connection with the case, I remembered. Doug offered to provide documentation of Logan's termination and the fraudulent expense claims to support our case. It shows a pattern, he said. That could be important for your father's lawsuit. I thanked him and immediately called Elaine to relay the conversation. She was extremely interested in Doug's offer. This is exactly what we need, she said. It demonstrates this wasn't just a one-time lapse in judgment, but systematic fraudulent behavior. I'll subpoena the records officially, but having him willing to cooperate makes it much easier. The revelation explained a lot. Why Logan and Isabel had been even more aggressive about taking money from Dad recently, why they'd been staying at their apartment less, probably avoiding the landlord, and why they'd been so desperate for that New York trip. They weren't just greedy, they were financially drowning. 3 weeks after Mom's visit, the district attorney filed formal charges. Logan, Isabel, and Mom were all named in the indictment. Multiple counts of identity theft, forgery, elder financial abuse, and grand larceny. They were ordered to surrender themselves within 48 hours. Isabel turned herself in first, quickly posting bail. Mom followed, looking shell-shocked in her booking photo. Logan waited until the last possible moment, arriving at the courthouse with a lawyer who looked like he charged by the minute. I thought that would be the end of the direct confrontations. The legal system would take over, and we could start to heal. I was wrong. That evening, while Dad and I were eating dinner, a car screeched into the driveway. I recognized the engine sound immediately. Logan's Audi. Dad heard it too, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. "Stay here," I said, standing up. "I'll handle this." Before I could reach the door, there was pounding, violent, angry hits that shook the frame. I looked through the peephole. Logan was standing there, red-faced and wild-eyed. "I know you're in there," he shouted. "Open the door or I'll break it down." I pulled out my phone and started recording, then opened the door but remained inside the threshold. "You're violating the protection order," I said calmly. "You need to leave." "Screw your protection order," he slurred. He'd been drinking. "You think you can just destroy my life? Get me arrested? Turn my own daughter against me?" "You did that yourself," I replied, keeping my voice level. "Now leave before I call the police." He pushed past me, shoving me hard against the wall. "Where is he? Dad! Where are you, you ungrateful old man?" Dad appeared in the dining room doorway, standing straight despite his age. "Logan, you need to go." Logan lurched toward him. I moved to intercept and he shoved me again, harder this time. I stumbled backward, nearly falling. "You're going to drop these charges," Logan demanded, jabbing a finger at Dad. "Today. Call your lawyer. Call the DA. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding." Dad didn't flinch. No. It was just one word, but I'd never heard him say anything with such finality. Logan's face twisted. He grabbed my shirt and slammed me against the wall. "This is your fault! You turned him against me!" Dad moved faster than I thought possible. He grabbed Logan's arm and pulled him off me with surprising strength. "Don't touch my son!" Logan spun around, momentarily shocked that our 68-year-old father had intervened. Then his expression darkened again. He shoved Dad backward. That was it. I tackled Logan, taking him to the ground. We struggled, knocking over a side table. He was bigger, but I was sober and focused on one thing, keeping him away from Dad. Outside, a voice called, "Everything okay in there?" Our neighbor, a retired cop who still kept to police hours, had heard the commotion. "Call 911, I shouted back. Logan tried to get up, suddenly realizing the situation had escalated beyond his control. I held him down. "You're not going anywhere." 5 minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. Officers entered with hands on their weapons, quickly assessing the scene. They separated us, took statements, and reviewed the video I'd recorded on my phone. "He violated a protection order and assaulted both of us," I explained, showing them the bruise already forming on my arm. They handcuffed Logan and led him outside. As they put him in the cruiser, one officer turned to me. "We'll need you both to come down to the station to give formal statements. His bail will almost certainly be revoked for this." I nodded, looking back at Dad. He stood in the doorway, a small cut on his forehead where he'd hit the wall, but otherwise intact. He didn't look sad or angry, just resolved, like a weight had finally been lifted. "You okay?" I asked him. "I'm good," he said. "It's finally over." The legal process ground forward with the slow, inevitable pace of justice. Logan, facing overwhelming evidence plus the new charges of assault and violating a protection order, had his bail revoked. He would wait for trial in county jail. The forensic accountant finished her report, and the total amount stolen had increased to $287,450. This included unauthorized credit card charges, cash withdrawals, fraudulent loans, the forged reverse mortgage application, unauthorized vehicle purchases, and direct theft of personal property. The accountant found money trails leading to offshore accounts where Logan had apparently been stashing some of the funds. Not huge amounts, but evidence of planning and intent. 2 months after Logan's arrest, he accepted a plea deal. 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation and full restitution. Mom got 2 years probation and community service, her role deemed less central, but still significant. She would be required to repay $42,000 of the stolen funds. Isabel fought the charges longer, but eventually took a deal of her own: 18 months in prison and restitution. Unlike Logan, she was allowed to remain free until her sentencing date. The day before she was due to surrender and begin her sentence, she liquidated what assets the court hadn't frozen, filed for divorce from Logan while he sat in jail, and disappeared to Florida with some guy she'd met online. She left Amelia behind. A warrant was issued for Isabel's arrest, but Florida authorities hadn't located her yet. Amelia, being 17, wasn't charged with any crimes despite her knowledge of what was happening. The DA considered her a minor who had been influenced by her parents' behavior, rather than a willing participant in the fraud, though everyone knew she had benefited from and been morally complicit in the scheme. She was ordered to complete 200 hours of community service and attend financial ethics counseling. The civil judgment from Dad's elder abuse lawsuit was substantial: $287,450 in stolen funds, plus interest and punitive damages, bringing the total to $375,000. The court ordered the sale of their remaining assets, garnishment of future wages, and liens against anything they might acquire. They would be paying Dad back for decades. About 3 weeks after Isabel disappeared, I received an email from a woman named Kendra, Isabel's estranged sister, whom I'd met only once at their wedding years ago. "I saw the news about Isabel skipping town before her sentencing," she wrote. "I'm not surprised. She's done this before." I called Kendra that evening, curious about what she meant. Over the phone, she explained that Isabel had a history of financial manipulation dating back to their teens. "She cleaned out our parents' retirement fund when she was 20, Kendra told me. Convinced them to add her to their accounts to help manage their finances. 6 months later, the money was gone and she was too. She did the same thing to her first husband before Logan." Kendra hadn't spoken to Isabel in years, but still had mutual acquaintances who kept her in the loop. One of them had recently seen Isabel in Naples, Florida, posting photos of beach days and shopping sprees on a private social media account. "I have her new address," Kendra said. "I know it's the right thing to give it to you." She explained that she'd always felt guilty for not warning Logan about Isabel's past. "I tried once, at the engagement party, but he thought I was just being a jealous sister. After that, I stayed away." I thanked her for coming forward and immediately forwarded the information to Elaine. Within days, she had coordinated with Florida authorities and upgraded Isabel's warrant to include flight to avoid prosecution. The evidence of her previous scams helped establish a pattern that strengthened our case. "This is extremely helpful," Elaine said. "Shows the court this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a calculated pattern of behavior. If they find her, it will significantly impact her sentencing." 3 weeks later, Isabel was arrested at a high-end boutique in Naples. Her new boyfriend apparently had no idea about her criminal history and quickly distanced himself when he learned the truth. She was extradited back to face her original sentence plus additional charges for fleeing. Throughout it all, Dad remained calm. The anger I expected never materialized. Just a quiet resignation, a sadness for what his family had become. 3 months after that fateful New Year's Eve, we were sitting on the porch. The neighborhood was calm. No strange cars parked up the street. No anxiety every time someone knocked. Dad handed me a thick envelope. Inside were property transfer papers. The house, his investments, everything. He'd already filed them with the county. "This house has almost been taken from me twice," he said. "Once by the bank and once by my own son. Not happening again." I told him I didn't need it, that I was just glad he was safe. He shook his head. "I've watched you both since you were kids. Logan always took. You always showed up. This house belongs with someone who will respect what it means." It's been 9 months since then. Logan's sitting in a state correctional facility. Mom moved in with her sister, chastened and apologetic, but not welcome in our lives anymore. Isabel's serving her extended sentence, the judge having been particularly unimpressed by her attempt to flee. Amelia's actually doing better. Her aunt has structure and rules, something Isabel never provided. Dad is healing. He started dating a woman from his community center, joined a bowling league, and actually smiles now. I've relocated my business to work remotely, spending half my time at Dad's house. Sometimes he'll bring up what happened, just as a reminder of what people are capable of when they think no one's watching. This wasn't revenge. This was justice.